everyone. Very good afternoon to everybody as we are now almost a week into phase 2 here in Singapore. My name is Chia. I'm the co-founder of EngageRocket, and it's my great pleasure this afternoon to be hosting this webinar with you. And I'm going to dive straight into the agenda. So this is what we're going to be covering today. First of all, we're going to be covering insights from the Pulse of the Singapore Workforce. Basically, it's a aggregated study, and I will share some of those findings with you. Right after that, the meat of today's webinar is going to be a panel discussion with an all-star panel, and you'll hear very, very many good insights. I'm really looking forward to that learning. So let's maybe quickly introduce EngageRocket. EngageRocket is the fastest growing people analytics technology company here in Southeast Asia. And we have had the privilege of being featured in many news outlets, as well as customers liking us and recommending us on forums that you can see on here. We're very excited, obviously, to be Singapore born and bred, and we've been very, very privileged to support the SG United effort through this, what we call the People Continuity Package. We partnered together with the Institute for HR Professionals, IHRP, and the Singapore HR Institute, SHRI, to be able to launch this study, and we launched it in record time. It was basically 1 week after PM announced that Singapore was going into the circuit breaker, and we wanted to quickly capture the sentiments in the workforce of people suddenly having to work from home, and leaders worrying that their people were either stressed out with concerns around their mental health, or that whether or not they're going to be effective working from home. So we launched the People Continuity Package to companies in Singapore as our way of supporting them, which was essentially them getting to use the EngageRocket platform for free during the circuit breaker period and beyond. So we were very humbled to get a very large number of respondents to this. So the numbers that you're seeing here are representative of all the responses that we've gotten so far from April all the way until today. Until today, we're continuing to collect data of more than 800,000 responses across 127 companies, almost 20,000 respondents across all major industries like education, engineering, construction, F&B, retail, technology, of course, all the different industries that you can think of, and participation rates at 64%, which was very, very high for a voluntary study like this. What this means in terms of the accuracy of the data, you're going to be able to see a margin of error at less than 1% at the 95% confidence interval. So what this means is that the data that you're going to see, the differences of more than 1% are going to be statistically significant. Now, obviously, we also want to look at the magnitude of those differences, not just whether they are statistically significant, in terms of how we determine policy. But just bear this in mind, the data is very, very, at a 64% participation rate with almost 20,000 respondents. We couldn't have asked for better data to measure the sentiments of the Singapore workforce through COVID-19. And we're very proud to say that with partnering with IHRP and SHRI has effectively helped this data set to be the largest and most accurate reflection of the sentiment of the Singapore workforce through COVID-19 so far. So here are some of the key insights. The first one is going to be around mental health and productivity. The good news, and you'll see this over the rest of the data as well, is that there's a remarkable story of resilience in the Singapore workforce. Mental health is actually improving over time, with fewer workers reporting that they are stressed. So we asked this question, all things considered, my stress levels are still acceptable. And those who are thriving, we categorize those who answered agree or strongly agree to that statement, and disagree or strongly disagree. And you see very clearly the trends going up, almost a 10 percentage point increase in people who found their stress levels still acceptable, and a decrease in more than 10 percentage points for those who reported being stressed. So very, very good news. And again, we we are very blessed to have month-on-month data through so we can make trends such as this. When we looked at the concerns or the top concerns that people had around COVID-19, these were actually quite stable over time. They were very understandable concerns around the health and economic impact on the country, as well as the fact that the health and safety concerns of their own family, that they were very concerned that a member of their family might contract COVID-19. There was a slight increase in that in June, perhaps reflecting the end of the circuit breaker and the return to work for some industries, resulting in a slightly higher level of concern there. For those of us worried that that working from home may be or COVID-19 may be an impediment to productivity, the good news is that a good 4 out of 10 of respondents said that they're very concerned about the impact of this on their own productivity and performance. So the workaholic Singaporean really comes through in this data. The other good news here on adaptation is that productivity is actually increasing over time. So we asked this question: when working from home, it takes me more time, less time, or the same amount of time to achieve the same productivity as compared to working in office? We found that those who reported taking less time, meaning that their productivity has gone up, is actually increasing over the months. Whereas those that said that it's going to take them more time or their productivity has gone down, actually reduced quite dramatically over time. So just 46% to 30% of the respondents, this is a 1/3 reduction in the number of people that claimed that they were less productive. While there's been this story of personal adaptation, we also asked about some of the main challenges that people faced while working from home. And very clearly, infrastructure and the ways of working remain challenges. So being able to access resources that they could have access to in the office, as well as practical aspects, such as their family presence and so on. In fact, we found that parents of school-going children were twice as likely to report this as an issue. Another issue that it seems to be growing is actually communication among team members. So this was reported to be an issue 35% of across 35% of the respondents in April, and now in June this is now closer to 40%. So while there's a personal adaptation, like we have our own screens at home, we've adapted with our keyboards and so on, and have stuck up signs to warn our children that we're working. I think what this data is telling us is that company infrastructure to support productivity while working from home has some ways to go to improve, as well as being able to adapt in terms of the leadership and communication skills that people need to have to manage remote teams. One other issue here is, or one good thing that we can see here is that people reporting that they don't face any challenges working from home actually increased, and in fact almost doubled. And those reporting poor productivity almost reduced by 50%. The next big insights were around hybrid workplaces and the new normal. So how much of this working from home and on-site working is going to be the new normal? And what we found was that there was a very strong and stable preference to work from home. When we published this data, the Straits initially in April, the Straits Times picked it up immediately, and what surprised us was that preference to work from home continued to remain. We're going to be polling this audience later on as well to see if that is true for this group. But basically, 84% of people said that after COVID-19, they are actually keen to work from home permanently at least half of the time. So that was a very, very strong statement of preference that they had. We looked at this across generations and across time, and we find that even across generations, this hasn't changed that much. Um, uh, Even like whether you're a young or older worker, your preference to work from home is pretty much the same. The main difference here is that the younger workers report being more productive while working from home. 71% of them reported being at least as equally productive or more while working from home. What was remarkable was that for workers over 50 years, um, that number now is 58%. This has grown quite dramatically over the month. So uh, older workers are getting more productive as well. When it comes to thinking about social distancing at work, 3 out of 4 believe that this should last for at least the next 6 months. So in terms of the new normal, we can expect this, or the ground is telling us that very much they expect this to be the case for at least the next 6 months. And here we find that almost a third of them, or actually 1/3 of them, are saying that this should be the case for at least the next year. And this comes up very strongly in the data around the concerns around health fears, the resurgence in COVID-19. This has happened in many other parts of the world that have opened up. 72% of the respondents report that this is a major concern that they have about returning to work, while co-workers and their own compliance to safety measures and is another concern that people reported. Finally, we looked at engagement and resilience through crises. As leaders, as HR professionals, we know that employee engagement is really important, and particularly so in crises. But we wanted to find data to back that up, like how important exactly is it? So we use this concept called the Employee Net Promoter Score, which effectively asks a single question: how likely are you to recommend this organization to friends or family as a place to work, and divides the respondent into detractors, who are the least engaged, passives, and promoters, who are the most engaged. And the methodology is just the percentage of promoters minus the percentage of detractors. And this was developed by a global management consulting company, Bain & Company, and validated through numerous white papers. And what we found was that the overall net promoter score for everyone who took this study came out at +10. So this +10 is on a -100 to a 100 spectrum, which is great. It's a positive number. Our average prior to COVID-19 was across our benchmarks was -8. So this is actually a little bit higher than what we have seen before. And this was what really struck us, the impact of engagement and attention to culture. Engagement and culture here, what we found was that it reduces stress and it improves your organizational resilience by 2 times. So what we did was we looked at promoters, the most engaged, and the detractors, the least engaged, and we compared their responses to these 3 questions: the ability to manage stress, confidence in the actions taken by the company today, as well as confidence in the future of their company. And we found that promoters were twice as likely to say that they're managing the stress well today, twice as likely to say that they are very confident in the action steps taken by their organizations today, and twice as likely to be confident in the future. So when you are driving change in your organization, especially through a crisis like this, you need your people to be on board with you and fighting that fight with you. Promoters get you there, and creating engagement is what makes that organizational resilience stronger, because the engaged employees have that confidence in your leadership direction, have that confidence in the company's future to be willing to fight. And in fact, when we made the criteria even more stringent to say that instead of those who gave 4s or 5s on a 5-point scale to this question, just those who answered strongly agree, we found that promoters were 5 times more likely to say that they were confident in the future of their organization, making them very, very strong pillars of resilience for you. So how do we go about generating engagement in crises like this? Very clearly, very strongly, people were saying that care and communication at all levels drive that greatly. So we did a multiple regression analysis on all the different engagement driver questions that we asked. And we found that organizational communication and care were ones that had the highest impact on engagement, followed by manager support. So being able to give clear and regular feedback while working remotely through this crisis was something that people felt very strongly that engaged them. Finally, just sharing this piece of information. If you're looking at a low-hanging fruit in the organization to be able to drive confidence in the future, one low-hanging fruit is communicating effectively. So we asked this question about organizations and leadership communicating effectively during the COVID-19 pandemic, and we saw a very clear linear relationship between the level of communication and the level of confidence that companies had. Each of these data points here represent one of the companies that participated in this project, and we didn't see, what we didn't see was a tapering off, which would suggest a diminishing marginal returns to communication. But we instead saw that the more you communicate effectively, the more you drive confidence in the future for your people. So that brings me to the end of the sharing. I hope you've had time to digest that very rapid fire number of insights. But you please do feel free to ask for a copy of the slides. We're going to be sharing the link to the post-event survey right after this. So we're very privileged to have with us today three very distinguished panelists. I'm going to introduce them in order that they are appearing on my screen. Ms. Low Peck Kem, she's the president of the Singapore HR Institute and the board member on the IHRP. She's very extensive experience in all sectors in Singapore in HR, and we're very, very proud to have her with us here today. Incidentally, this project, the People Continuity Package, was actually sparked from one of her ideas as well. So it's kind of coming full circle. Thank you for joining us today, Peck Kem.
It's a pleasure.
Next, we have Ms. Catherine Chia. So Kat is the CHRO of Starhub, and she's also got extensive experience in both large listed local companies as well as multinationals, and is a very, very innovative and driven HR professional. I'm very, very proud to have you here with us today as well, Kat. And
good afternoon, everyone.
Last but not least, we have Mr. Shaun Ee. So he is the HR director at Asia Pacific Breweries. So we know where to go to when we want to go for happy hour right after this. But Shaun has a very extensive experience as well in the food and beverage industry from multinationals as well as large local companies. And something that strikes me very much about Shaun is that he's very, very down to earth and connected to the ground. He's one of those HR leaders that you immediately trust once you speak to him. And I'm very, very proud to have you here to join us as well, Shaun.
Thanks, Chitung. It's a pleasure to be here as well.
Okay, now just before we dive into the questions, I'm going to share the results of the poll. Well, I think the polling results have pretty much been ended off. So we're starting to see that actually, so a quick commentary on this. We have 88% of people are saying that they would want to work from home half the time or more, and only 2% don't want to work from home anymore. So very, very in line with the data at the national level. And likewise, those thinking that social distancing should continue, again, another very close, almost 70% saying that should be the case, with another 1/3 again saying that these social distancing measures should be around for at least the next year. So, wow, it's remarkable, remarkable alignment in the data. I swear we didn't rig this. We didn't get along to get this to be the case.
Actually, Chitong, if I may add, 2 weeks ago, we did an instant poll at an all-employee town hall. Believe it or not, the data is identical. Wow. And it was an instant poll, exactly like this. All employees, wow. CEO, myself, so it's very interesting, totally similar.
I think the more reason why we better get ready for the new normal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very much so. Actually, that ties me into the first question, Peck Kem, where despite all of this data collected, and there's a lot of articles written right around all of this, is it really a given that we are going to enter the new normal in the workplace? And I'm very curious, would companies just go back to the way things were before we started this COVID-19 period? And once we exit phase 3, would people just go back to normal?
Well, it depends on what you define as normal. So I think like you rightly pointed out, and also the survey results actually alluded to it, it's going to be a new normal. We could never imagine that because of the circuit breaker, 80% of the workforce was literally working from home and telecommuting and life goes on. And I suppose, we keep saying that it is not exactly safe, even though we say safe reopening, safe transition, realistically, it is not safe until you can find a vaccine. And today, we are still seeing the numbers of people who are being infected. And even though these are fortunately, we are quite blessed that our fertility rate is quite low. But it is as a result of a lot of precautions that we take. And like we said, don't waste a crisis. The lessons that we learned, how we can become more productive, even though I think it's amazing that we are able to get like 330 over participants in this platform, versus if you have to go and book a function room and a ballroom and all that. And people just dial in and you can actually share a lot of this information. So different time zones as well. So I think, honestly, even after phase 3, it's going to be a new normal. And like our wise participants have alluded to, well, maybe within the next 1 year or so, some of these new habits that we have established, clearing your tray after you eat at the hawker center, a higher level of hygiene, wash your hands thoroughly and more often, and have that safe distancing. So I think with phase 1 and phase 2, it's like forbidden fruit, right? You have not been able to mingle and socialize for a while. It's like, wow, a little bit of all hell break loose, but we are still quite disciplined. And you don't see the numbers jumping up. But it takes a lot of communication, a lot of assurances, and still a lot of reminders on TV and all that, elderly persons, please don't go out, market, you still need to flash your IC or need to queue and limit those numbers. So some of these initiatives, I think, will continue. It's just a different level of security, and we basically need to go back to a new normal where people feel safe and we are able to manage the cases that come about.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a very good description of what we're going through right now. Shaun, I want to direct this to you because this is probably something that you are dealing with as well. One of the current challenges of some companies returning to work is having to manage a hybrid workforce. Some working from home, others on site, and this has led to a lot of fears about safety for those that have to go on site, and then for those that are working from home, they are then concerned about being marginalized, not in front of the boss. How have you been addressing these concerns with your people?
Yeah, I mean, so first and foremost, the safety and well-being of our people in APBS, Asia Pacific Breweries Singapore, has always been a top priority for us. And we've got such a diverse workforce comprising so many different functions, right? So it was critical at the start that we moved very quickly to assure everyone that we truly place people at the center of our business. So what we did right at the start was really to align ourselves with the government's many advisories. That was a very key step that we took. And then what followed was actually putting in place very comprehensive safe management measures, both for staff who were continuing to work on site, such as those in our brewery, as well as those who were continuing to work off site as part of the essential force, for example, our sales force, right? We also looked at redeploying affected employees to other roles and functions if they were not able to perform their roles. Even for employees who were affected by border controls, we also arranged alternative accommodation for them. Then, of course, for the rest of us, it was work from home all the way till today. Not really easy for a business operation like ours. Not really easy also for a socializing culture that we have. But we are clear that we will always ensure that our people are safe and well taken care of. So how have we kept this whole inclusivity in our workforce till today? Really simply, and I think your survey showed it as well, it's through communication, communication, and communication. Right? Very simple, very focused, impactful communication to reassure our staff and to give them the confidence that we would all ride out the storm together. I mean, we're still in the storm. The storm may not be as heavy anymore, but we would still ride out the storm together. And obviously, when we looked at communication, we used very different channels, making sure we got the message from the proverbial boardroom to the crew room, and vice versa through things like virtual town halls, obviously through emails, mass emails that we sent out. But very key, I think, was line manager communication to individual team members. So we saw an increase in the number of one-on-ones with our people. We saw an increase in the number of team check-ins every day. We have our Thirsty Thursdays, our Funky Fridays, where, at the end of the workday, we just let our hair down and just chill out with a drink right in front of our computers, because we really want to socialize responsibly, right? Also, what was key, and what also came out very strongly for us, was peer-to-peer communication. So it's not always about top down or even bottom up. It's also being there as a support structure for your fellow colleagues, right? And we do this through things like workplace that we have in the company, obviously through WhatsApp, and then of course sometimes the traditional phone call would work as well. But I think the key was really keeping the channels of communication open at all times to our people.
Okay, thank you very, very much for that, Shaun. Actually, I'm gonna remind. Okay, so this is coming through very strongly. I'll remind the audience as well that on the Q&A tab, you can actually upvote questions if you'd like answers to them. And I'm actually going to pick up the top one right here. What would you say? So I'm going to address this to Kat, mainly because you guys did the Snap poll as well, and then as a telco, Starhub will be at the bleeding edge of initiatives to help your people stay connected and productive. But
I hope so.
what would you say to a CEO who insists that he wants people to be back at work and insists that they're despite all of these tools and technology, how he just wants the FaceTime, right? How even if people are effective working from home, where the HODs, so I'm going to read out the question, where the HODs are of the opinion there is no need to be at the office. So the CEO basically wants everybody back, but the department heads all feel that actually we're quite okay working from home. How do we handle that?
So first of all, I want to say with the COVID-19 situation, above all, it is really a call for leadership, right? Safety, how we cope with everything else, absolutely, but it is a call for leadership. So in this situation, if I'm put in that situation, first of all, the key is, what are our key principles? The overriding principles is safety of our employees are most important. FaceTime, no FaceTime, safety is most important. And until we know that, the curve is completely flattened and we are into phase 3 and beyond, if not, right, whatever the ministry, the guidelines from the ministry, that prevails, completely prevails. So that is very, very clear, right? And I think we also then have to help leaders to understand that actually interacting virtually, working virtually, it can be very effective too. So I think if we are very clear that the employee's safety is the overriding concern, then I think the decision is binary. It's really binary. It's quite binary in this situation. There's no compromise. There's no compromise. Now, if we are out of COVID and the conversation is around, do we go back to what it was pre-COVID? Everybody comes back to work physically in the office. Do we go to the other extreme of all working from home, or do we have a hybrid workforce? Then as a leadership team, this is a key conversation to be had. It is a conversation around culture. What is the culture of the organization? You know, and this morning, I just had the conversation with our senior leadership team, right? And we want to move towards a hybrid work arrangement for various reasons, not just because, you know, certain consulting companies says it's the trend and there was a newspaper article and therefore we must do it. If not, we look like we are not on trend. But more because, number one, you know, work is not just about location. Traditionally, many of us saw work as a location. Work is really an output and an outcome. If we understand work to be that way, then actually it can be done in many different locations. It doesn't have to be in the physicality of the office, right? If we go along with that, we want to build a culture in Starhub, a culture of empowerment and trust. And to have a flexible work arrangement takes that really many notches up, right? If you trust your colleagues, if you trust that everybody is present and bring their A game, whether they're in the office or at home, or actually working from Starbucks, taking a call from Starbucks, and actually the physicality of the location fades away. So we, this morning in the conversation with the senior leadership team, we spoke about wanting to build a culture of trust, empowerment, and a self-directed workforce. So the question then is, what is the mechanics of that hybrid work arrangement, right? And we still have to work that out. Lots of that mechanics to be figured out, but it's definitely something that we want to encourage because it will drive work-life integration. It also then has implications that we can actually have more possibility for opening this up to a different type of workforce. Mothers who might not be able to commute that much, right? We might be able to job share. It opens our mind to a variety of possibilities, yeah, and opportunities.
Yeah, I'd like to echo Kat's point about, you know, the culture of trust that is so important in order to make it work. So if we start off with trusting your employees and trusting your management team as well, and really trust by default. It's like right now we are saying that, you know, work from home by default as the default position. And if we trust as the default position, and people basically wants to do a good job, you give them the right environment, you give them the clear KPIs and what is expected of them to deliver. And I also like Shaun's point of, you know, it's not easy for the leaders of the organization to also pick up new skills.
It's true.
Yeah, I mean, last time you can probably, you know, get a glass of beer and go, hey, cheers, let's talk it over. Now you can you go and get beer from your fridge and then come and through this computer and then we try to bond over it. Okay. So you should have sent some to us. So this will be a more fun session for everybody.
What COVID has shown us is human beings are really highly adaptable, right? And to adapt is a choice. Now, with COVID, we were forced to adapt. We weren't given a choice, right? But day to day, post the situation, we have experienced and now we have the choice. We are empowered to actually really harness lessons that we learn and enhance working conditions and the culture of an organization.
Yeah, I mean, you know, someone once said, right, it took us so long to embrace the idea of digitalization, but maybe only 100 days or 3 months to actually simply get it done. And that's what COVID-19 has actually forced us to do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That's a really good point. And I mean, it's echoing Peck Kem's earlier comment about not wasting a a good crisis, right? This has accelerated so fast. Let's not waste the gains that we have gotten, right?
Agree.
Yeah, and I think it's quite amazing how quickly people adapt.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to address this. This is a very popular question. It's been upvoted like 11 times. I'm going to address this to Peck Kem, and others can chime in as well, Kat and Shaun. Even though everyone says they are productive while working from home, is it at the cost of mental and physical well-being? And how can we rationalize productivity in this case? Or actually, anyone on the panel, if you want, I can.
I have to agree with, you know, it's very often it's easier said than done. And I'm sure it's true for my fellow panelists. Actually, when we work from home, it's actually more stressful because we are moving from iPad to iPhone to your laptop and to your, you know, MacBook and all that. And I was jokingly saying that quite often I find myself doing this to the monitor of my laptop, which, you know, doesn't work. So I think as much as we think we can multiplex, but even for senior leaders of the organization, I think regardless of age, we have to learn how to transit, and it takes time, and it takes a lot of discipline. I think contrary to, you know, some people's beliefs that, you know, you shouldn't telecommute because, you know, people are just slacking at home and, you know, maybe shopping instead of doing work. Actually, it takes a lot of discipline when you're working from home or telecommuting to really discipline yourself to say, okay, this is a break time, this is off work time, and not just make yourself available 24/7. And if we do not exercise those discipline, I tell you, anybody will go crazy. Yep. Because you don't have boundaries anymore. And work is work in your home, and you are perpetually worrying about work. So it is a very real problem. And I think the results of the survey also reflected that, you know, half of the people think that, you know, mentally it is a stress on themselves. So I think it's important for especially organizations to make sure that not only employees, but also the leaders of the organization are getting the kind of help and getting the kind of, you know, time out as necessary, so that you are able to take care of your not only physical, but also your mental well-being. And you should never take it for granted.
It's a good point. Take care. Make sure that you take care of yourself first before you can take care of the people that you're working with.
Yes, and I always emphasize, especially to HR professionals, I say, for heaven's sake, don't behave like cobbler's children that run around without shoes. As you take care of your people, make sure you exercise self-care and take care of yourself. Even aircraft also, right? You know, if anything happens, make sure you put the mask on yourself before you put on your kid, that kind of thing. So we must always make sure we exercise some self-care.
That's a really good point.
Completely resonate and agree with Peck Kem's point, right? I think mental health is very much, it's a lot, we have to be personally accountable for that. And much like our government put in place a circuit breaker for COVID, we need our little circuit breakers every day, whether it's a short walk or a 45-minute lunch break, you know, with our kid who is doing a home-based learning. And organizationally, we can build in some little nudges, right? Such as not starting a meeting too early, right? And respecting lunchtime. You know, when we're in the office, you actually disappear during lunch, right? You can't have. When we are working from home, there is this unspoken understanding that you should reply to that instant message, right? So as an organization, we can build in those nudges and respect the space of the individual, help with that, right? Yeah.
I mean, for me, I feel it's key that leaders and employees alike, I mean, we recognize that it is okay not to be okay. There is a moment in time where we are allowed to be vulnerable. There is a moment in time where we are allowed to tell ourselves that we are not all that. We're not Superman. We're not Superwoman, and we can't do everything as quickly as we want to. We can't do everything as efficiently as we want to when we used to be in the office. You know, so it's about coming to terms with that and understanding and agreeing that. It's okay not to be okay, and sometimes we just need to be there for one another, and that's the most important thing. Yeah, it's all about that, and it's working hand in hand to come to that common understanding.
I really like that. There's a lot of really good points there. Actually, quite related to that is the next question from the audience. It's another very popular question. If so many people want to work from home, what are some logical changes in staff benefits? And what would the purpose of the physical office be in your organization? So like staff benefits, I can think of like maybe upgrading the Starhub Wi-Fi at home, delivering Tiger beer.
Too bad we're not working for APB. Otherwise, we'll all have our Tiger beer while we're doing this.
I'll be happy to send our account managers to your company to expand your connectivity and bandwidth anytime.
No, but I think in all seriousness, there are actually so many opportunities. So if you think about it, and today I think quite a few companies are still practicing split teams, team A, team B kind of thing. So even though we say, telecommute by default, those who have to go in, try to go in during your team's session and ask for permission if you need to go back for urgent things and all that. So if the new normal means that, maybe not 100%, even if you have 30% of your workforce that is telecommuting at any point in time, imagine the space savings that you have, the savings in rental, in real estate. And if you look at those savings, and to make it a bit more comfortable and more productive for your staff, give them some allowance to go and buy a proper keyboard, a proper monitor, rather than they have to keep staring at a small laptop screen, especially for those who are a bit more senior that wants to see spreadsheet in a bigger font size. So I think these are little things that if you put your head to it and look at it from the employee's perspective, and you can really look at, from the business savings, how you can save money, and then plow it back to how you can translate those into some staff welfare for your employees, even though they may not be in the office. But if you enhance their work environment, their home environment to be more conducive for them to be more productive at work, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah. One thing we did very quickly was to ensure that our employees have the right infrastructure. So we upgraded our VPN so that the speed can accommodate everyone at one go. Gave everyone unlimited talk time on the mobile phone because there was a lot more communication, and of course we are telco, right? Before that, nobody talked on the mobile phone, because you see each other face to face. We actually also spend time on cybersecurity education because that is very, very real and not to be neglected. And we even went to the extent of allowing employees to bring their office chairs home, right? Because not everyone is set up that way. We have flexi benefits, and we extended our flexi benefits for employees to be able to claim for work from home accessories. So there are big things, there are small things, and I think we want to be supportive, but we also are a bit careful not to turn it into something that is entitled, right? So there is that fine line, and for many of us who are HR practitioners, that's always the torture zone, right? When is it good support? When is it, okay, this is bordering on spoon feeding and entitlement? Any of you with a good answer, I would love to know what that is. It's my torture zone every day.
Yeah, I think there was a part on the question on the physical office, right? And the reality is that we still do see a physical office as the go-to place where we build a community, where we build relationships, we still build that bonds. I mean, despite moving towards a flexible work arrangement, whether it's flex place, flex time, we still know that there's that physical office that we want to go back to. So essentially, if we say to do completely without the physical office, I'm not sure if that's the way to go. It's still that place that we want to return to sometime in the new normal. And that really gives us hope, right? Because for those of us who are working from home today, you almost cannot wait for the day where you get back to the office and can actually see people, not just on a screen, but really face to face.
Mm. And
Yeah, I agree with that.
there's this question that's addressed to Peck Kem, but then I think actually happy to open this up to everybody. With this new normal, it seems like there's these critical skills that we need to have as leaders and managers that maybe were less important before. I think we mentioned some of that, happy hour over Zoom, engaging people. What else? What other skills should leaders in the new normal have?
I think earlier, Chitong, you mentioned something about, leaders need to also be open to show their vulnerabilities. And Shaun said it's okay to be not okay, right? So I think as leaders, this is going to be the new normal. Us communicating and having a team bonding through the virtually is going to be a new normal. And even when you cannot see each other, physically be present in one meeting room, I noticed that very often when we have a virtual meeting, people tend to not share screen. They don't share the video. So it's like, if you are very slaggy or you're wearing pajamas, you don't want people, and you still show that front, So I think one skill which the leaders will need to learn, and I think it still boils down to that element called trust. You have to show and tell your staff or your colleagues that you are just human, You are sometimes okay, you are sometimes not okay. And why do we not want to share our video? Because, you are shy, cannot be shy, right? And these are colleagues that you work with all the time. So these are, I think, habits that we may not be used to, but we will have to start to get used to it and show your vulnerable side. And I think leaders, especially in this period, for me, I think you need to take extra effort to engage. It's no longer so simple as just popping in. I think like what Kat said, you have to be respectful of people's break time or downtime and all that, and not assume that, oh, you're working from home, anytime I can call you. It takes special effort. So I think if we know that people tend to kind of work through and not take their breaks. So one trick I used is that I wanted to give my staff a platform where they can actually still have that connection and that engagement, even though they can't just pop into my office. So I actually say that, every day at 11:30 a.m., we will just do a half an hour quick check-in, okay? And then you can just tell me how you feel. If there's something that you need a quick decision because you're so busy running around, this is the platform. And I said, keep it short. Okay, if it's long grandfather story kind of work, we schedule a separate time. But this is really a daily ops update. Okay, and I said, keep it short, only half an hour. Okay, at best you drag another 15 minutes. And why do I do that? Because by then I finish, it will be 12:15, 12:30, it's lunchtime. And I always end up with, please go have lunch, go take a break. Otherwise, they'll be sitting there and continue one last email, and you will never get out of your seat.
Well, this is a really interesting way to force people to have lunch.
Yeah. And I think it's not so much of forcing them to have lunch. It is really showing genuine care and concern and be authentic about it. So you try to schedule it in, and it reminds them and reminds you to remind them to please take care of yourself and do take a break.
So I would like to just build upon Peckham's point. I think in a remote working environment, leaders need two skills that I think stand out for me. A, that of a super communicator, and B, leaders need to be digitally really savvy. Because when we are working either in a full work from home situation or hybrid situation, the way we collaborate is digital, is virtual, and we need to be really savvy about how to use those tools to share information, to have meetings, to take notes so that everybody can see it virtually, visually, etc., etc. Very important, right? Second thing, in terms of super communicator, I just want to share that the minute we went into circuit breaker, right, what we did in Starhub was the senior leadership team, CEO and the senior leadership team, we started to have weekly town halls with our employees, weekly, every Friday, 2 to 3 p.m. And then as we entered nearer to phase 2, we started fortnightly. And I would tell you, right, the attendance of these sessions is higher than when we had physical town halls. We were surprised, right? At any one point, 30% of our employees have to work on site in the shops, network engineers. So the other 70%, of the other 70%, more than 85% will consistently attend it, right? So number one, we need to communicate and over-index on that. And we must be transparent. We take the effort as a senior leadership team answering every question on the Q&A. And if we cannot finish it, we will record it afterwards and post it so that employees know that we are transparent, we are not hiding information, we give real-time feedback. What does that do? That builds confidence. That builds a certain connection. When people cannot be together physically, they cannot feel the vibe, right? So if they cannot feel the vibe, we have to let them hear the vibe. And if we do not plant a narrative into employees' mind, then what will happen? They will replace it with their own narrative. Oh my goodness, that's where all sorts of rumors and speculation happen. So communication, transparency, having a clear narrative over and over again, I think is such an important thing.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on, if this were a multiple choice question, I would say all of the above. Plus, I think the one critical skill also is agility. And agility to really adapt to a changing normal, because no one has the answers on what really the new normal holds for any of us, right? But what we have now is an idea of what the new normal is, but staying agile, staying adaptable would allow us to modify, change our plans, our responses where needed. I think what this COVID-19 pandemic has shown us is the quicker we are to react, the better it is, because that's where we then have a better chance of guaranteeing the health and safety of our people. So really staying agile and knowing what we need to do as soon as we need to do it. I think that's really critical as well.
I have to second Shaun's point about being agile. And I mean, as we talk about being managers and the organization and management, what we need to do, what about us as employees? Even though I'm HR, I'm still an employee. I think we really need to realize that technology is changing the way we work. And I mean, look at the F&B industry, right? and how things have changed. So I think we have to constantly, and this is a never-ending task, regardless of how old we get. You have to constantly upskill, constantly look ahead, and make sure that you acquire the kind of skills and to Shaun's point, really the biggest obstacle I find is really the mindset. You need to adopt an agile mindset, and anything is possible.
Okay, we have time maybe for just one last question. I think of all of these, it looks like maybe this is the one that's that's easiest to answer quickly. What platforms or tools have you implemented that have immensely boosted productivity, communication, and engagement for everyone? So maybe if I can go around the panel very quickly, maybe starting with Kat.
We implemented Microsoft Teams very quickly, and that has really helped. You know, before that, honestly, we were such a face-to-face type of organization, right? Probably couldn't even spell Skype. But then very quickly we introduced it, and very high and quick adoption.
Yeah, for us, pretty much the same as well. We work on Teams. I think the very first experience I had with bringing on the new normal into Teams was we had our regional HR conference done virtually. So that was right at the start of the whole crisis, and it was quite an experience because for an organization like us, we pride ourselves on being in a socializing culture, right? We get together and we build relationships. So it was really something to be getting together virtually. But from that point until now, it's almost as if Teams were a second nature already. Again, right, as what Peck Kem said earlier, initially where people were very hesitant on bringing up their videos, today we're making it more of a habit to bring up the videos because, you know, sometimes, especially for visual people, they need to see a face or facial expression, right, to be able to keep awake or to be able to relate better. And that's where I think slowly we're starting to get used to it, and really we've really adapted it and done pretty well in it.
Yeah, I know, you know, this is something which I think every organization needs to do. So we are on Skype, and like I said, it just takes effort, and we have to just pick up the new skill, learn how to share, learn how to present, learn how to take over control and things like that. I mean, you fumble a few times, after that you learn. And the reason why my background is different from the rest of them, one is because, you know, I paid a lot of money for this picture, and two, I was fumbling with it, and I said, how come I cannot download it? But, you know, yeah, so be it, you know, admit your vulnerability, and, you know, it's quite a nice picture, so I'm getting my ROI out of it. But I think in the end, you know, we really need to get used to this new normal way of working. And I find that in March this year, I did a SHRI AGM, and it's done through a virtual platform. We used to take 3-4 hours, and when we did an AGM, it only took 1 hour. So I love it. That you are able to do it a lot more productively, a lot more effectively. Yeah. And in meetings, you know, if you share the video apart from just audio, it's actually very telling whether are you paying attention or are you just looking somewhere else and clearing email.
That's a really good point. And with that, it actually brings us to time. Thank you all very much. Just to quickly summarize all the leadership skills and management skills, one of them was being very open and vulnerable, being able to trust both ways, being a super communicator and also digitally savvy, and at the same time being very agile. So these are new skills that as leaders, we need to start developing as we enter and transition into the new normal. Thank you, Peck Kem, Kat, and Shaun, so much for sharing your wisdom and your insights. And thank you all very much for asking so many questions. I'm sorry that we couldn't get through all of them due to time constraints, but please feel free to suggest these on the feedback form that you're going to receive over email as well. Thank you very much once again. I've been Chitong from EngageRocket. A pleasure to host all of you this afternoon.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all.
Thank you for having us. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
See ya.
Take care.
Bye.
Stay safe.